are we doing?
Why don't you and I
sit?
I was sitting over there, but why don't I sit here so that I'm next to Cindy? Okay.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome. My name is Sebastian. I am the chair of the Board of Social Justice and Outreach, and we welcome you to our very first summer forum, part of our series on othering. And today we will be talking about our church becoming accessible to all, also known as A2A. And so we invite you to join us in August, where we'll be talking about human trafficking. And in September for Outreach Sunday, we'll be talking about asylum seekers and just immigration as a whole. So Without further ado, I'd like to introduce Cynthia.
Stand here. It's easier. Good morning. In 2005, at the 25th General Synod of the United Church of Christ, they adopted a resolution called to wholeness in Christ, becoming a church accessible to all, or A2A. The goal of this resolution was for the different settings of the UCC to study ways to include persons with all disabilities and reflect and study ways that congregations can become more accessible to all. This designation is granted through the UCC Disabilities Ministries Board and is similar to other designations such as Just Peace and Open and Affirming. In June of 2020, our conference passed a resolution at annual gathering to begin the process of becoming an A2A conference. Since that time, we have become one of the first designated A2A conferences in the entire UCC. Now it's First Church's turn. Over the years, we have always been a progressive, inclusive church. It only stands to reason that we would want to make sure that we learn everything we can to make our church and our congregation as welcoming and inviting as possible to all people. This A2A program can help us to succeed in that quest. This is a program that will likely affect us all. The U.S. Center for Disease Control and Prevention has determined that approximately 80%, that is 4 out of 5 people, 4 out of 5 Americans will live with some form of disability for more than 6 months during the course of their lifetime. Additionally, the National Alliance on Mental Illness states that 1 in 4 adults experiences a mental illness in a given year. Given these statistics, consider that the 2010 Harris Interactive Survey of Americans with Disabilities determined that persons living with disabilities are 35% more likely never to attend worship services, stating that it is not due to physical barriers, but attitudinal barriers that make them feel less welcome in houses of worship. Today, we begin the process to learn how to break down these attitudinal barriers that we may not even realize that we have. Marcely?
Hello, and we'll begin by sharing a video with you where women with various conditions show us how to embrace their conditions.
Good morning, Mom. Good morning, Mom. Morning there. Morning there. Man. Morning, Alice. Morning, Alice.
Oops.
Poor Bob. Like so.
Oops, wrong video. We will show you this one just a little bit later in the presentation. It is good. It is awkward, and it had an awkward introduction.
Sorry.
It says things with people with disability wish you knew.
I so often hear people send the message like, thank God that's not me, when they see someone with a disability, or like, thank God that's not me or my kid. And that's sending the message that disability is equal to someone who is less than or broken or incomplete, and that's not the case. I have cerebral palsy. It affects me pretty much from the hips down and also just like fine motor control and things like that. So I have Tourette syndrome, which is a neurological disorder, which means I do movements and noises that I can't control.
I have cerebral palsy as well as left hemiparesis and nystagmus, which means that my whole left side is weaker than my right.
I have a very aggressive form of lupus, and I have a blood clotting disorder associated with my lupus. And 4 years ago, I had a clot in my foot. And then this happened in over 8 months and 11 surgeries. This was the end.
I love having Tourette's. I love that I'm 4'7". I love my obsessive compulsive disorder. And I think that's the case that many of us have embraced our disabilities.
I've had my disability since I was born, and it's a part of me.
My brain is quick and witty and wildly inappropriate, and it also has Tourette's. And at some point, I decided not to just love parts of my brain. A lot of times I see kids staring at me. That's okay with me.
I welcome it. Kids are curious.
But what I struggle with is when a parent shushes them or quickly pulls them in the other direction.
When a child is hustled away from a person or hushed, it stigmatizes even just asking the question.
Because kids then associate disability with feeling ashamed.
And if they've never seen anything like this before, they're gonna look. And if they have questions, let them ask. There's nothing wrong with that.
So instead, I hope that parents say things like, how cool that we all move differently and walk differently and talk differently, more than just like normalizing disability, but celebrating it. We date. People with disabilities date, and not always other people with disabilities.
Just because I have a disability doesn't mean I have to be paired with somebody with a disability.
Direct message to everyone in my life, but if you're going to set me up on a blind date, please have more criteria than this guy also has a disability.
Not every single person with a disability is in a wheelchair. I am not in a wheelchair. I've never been in a wheelchair.
If one more person calls me an inspiration after just meeting me, I'm going to burn your house down.
We aren't inherently inspirational or brave because we are disabled, which is kind of the idea that people think about when they say that.
It's okay to call me an inspiration once you know me or know something about me, but genetics does not make me an inspiration. Let me earn that word.
There are people who are actually doing amazing, brave things out there, whether they have a disability or not.
But it comes across to a disabled person as, wow, I'm so happy that I'm not in your shoes.
I get a lot of strangers trying to help me up the steps by grabbing my arm or my waist or something, and that's extremely inappropriate.
You can say, hey, do you need some help? Rather than just either forcing my chair or ignoring me. It took me a while to actually call myself a person with a disability, but I'm a person first. Being an amputee is secondary.
I'd rather have somebody say I'm a person with a disability rather than being disabled because of the whole control and ownership issue.
I hear differently abled. Oh, the word is disability.
I used to call myself like differently abled, and some people didn't like that. And I'm just like, but I am different. And they're like, no, you're not. And it took me a while to actually see that I was using very able-bodied terms.
It should be a descriptor, just like I'm right-handed. I have a disability. When we're talking about disabilities, I hear the word that we want to be accommodating, which is great. Or we're working on tolerance. Nobody wants to just be tolerated. Like I tolerated those 3 years my sister was learning to play the trombone. I tolerate going to the dentist. None of these things are things I like. They're things I tolerate because I know that I have to deal with. So there's such an important step in communities between opening the door to somebody with a disability and like embracing them and building a community with them in mind.
Motivating. So I'd like to introduce the committee members. My name is Marceline Malatesta, and I do have personal relations with people with disabilities. Both my children as well as my father is completely visually impaired to the point where he has no eyesight at this point, and my mother has dementia. That's probably why you haven't seen my dad around much. Plus, they just moved to a senior community. But professionally, I also work in the field. I've been in the field of working with persons with disabilities for over 25 years. I run programs for adults with neurological and developmental disabilities, and actually just started a brand new job in an acute psychiatric hospital, which I'm thrilled about. So now I'm working with persons with mental illness. Our other committees members include Lindsay, who's not here today. So Cynthia will read hers.
Cindy,
Cindy, I'm sorry.
Cindy, can I hold the mic for you?
That'd be great. Hello, everyone. I've been a member of First Church for over 20 years, and I call myself a disability rights nerd. Hi. So the Civil Rights Act of 1964 did not list people with disabilities as a protected class, so we had to come up with our own civil rights law, and that's the Americans with Disabilities Act, the ADA, which is in 1990. And let's see, what else did I say? Oh yeah, so churches are exempt from complying with the ADA, to keep church and state separate. So I really applaud First Church for going through this process, especially Cynthia here, who is our fearless leader in this quest. So thank you.
Let me stand up. We have another member, Lindsay Nelson, who unfortunately is sick today. So Cindy's going to read her bio also, but I'll do mine first. I was raised by a mother with a disability. She was blind in one eye. I'm also, by profession, a medical architect, and I've spent my career designing spaces to provide accessibility since California was way ahead of the nation in this field. Throughout my career, I had the privilege of working with two folks who were deaf and another as a coworker. They were all very successful architects, and I learned a lot from both of my bosses. Most recently, I have been serving on the conference accessibility team. We've worked to obtain the A2A designation for the conference, and we're now working to implement more accessibility into all of the settings of our conference, such as Pilgrim Pines and our website.
Okay, now I'll read Lindsay's. She joined First Church in the fall of 2018, and she is on the board of Parish Life. She's legally blind and was born 3 months premature with a condition called retinopathy of prematurity. Oh, okay. Yeah, which means that her retinas were not fully developed. So she's blind in her left eye and she has limited sight in her right eye. Over the years, she's had a detached retina, cataracts, and glaucoma, and yet she's only 35. So even though her eyes don't sound like it.
And I would like to make a special call out to Reverend Tom, because he has been our kind of in the background major support throughout this whole time and has promised to continue with us as we move forward. Marcelly?
And now we'd like to share a second video with you. Are we on stories?
Yeah, stories.
Are we sure?
Yes, people's stories.
Oh, okay. I will go ahead and share my own. I had us out of order here. So, am I on the wrong page? What am I doing wrong? Okay, so is it you? I'm sorry, I have the wrong order here. Let me get myself organized. Here is Miss Cynthia to share her first personal story of being a person with a disability.
This is kind of short, but both Bryn and I fall into that 80% disability statistic we talked about earlier, as we've both experienced temporary disabilities where we needed to use a knee scooter. But it was great to be able to come to church and know that getting into the sanctuary or into the meeting rooms was not a problem. There was accessible restrooms available, and they were easy to find. The seating was available in the sanctuary, and we've noticed recently we could use some additional accessible parking on Sundays because it's usually full. We have a lot of folks that could use that. But the building itself is generally physically accessible.
Now we're on our video, right? Okay, so this is a video where two persons with visual and auditory disabilities will encourage us to just ask.
My name is Alex, and I'm blind. I lost my eyesight when I was 27 due to a medical condition. My name is Alex, and I'm blind. I lost my eyesight when I was 27 due to a medical condition that affected the specialized nerves at the back of my eyes.
My name is Sky, and I'm severely deaf, which means I wear 2 hearing aids to help me hear. I've been deaf my whole life.
Sometimes people are too distracted to see me, and I have to use what little vision I have to avoid them.
That was so good.
This is what I see.
Some people don't understand what I'm going through. It's not my fault I can't hear properly.
How do your sats go?
What? Sorry?
I said, how do your sats go?
This is what I hear. Sorry, I didn't hear you.
How did you... Forget it.
What's that in her ear? I'm not sure. I think it helps her to hear or something. Why can't people just come up to me and ask me about my hearing aid? I'll be fine with telling them.
I try not to let my disability get in the way. Just like everyone else, I enjoy spending time with my family and friends and try to be independent.
And I love gymnastics, and being deaf doesn't stop me. I'd love to represent Great Britain one day.
Can you imagine not being able to see?
Can you imagine not being able to hear?
There are millions of people in the world who have a sensory disability.
You might know or meet someone like me with a hearing disability. Don't be worried.
Don't hesitate. Be confident. Just ask.
Just ask.
Can I help?
Isn't it amazing? I know it just seems so simple, just ask, but yet how many times do we find ourselves, you know, what do I do? What do I say?
Going out, flipping out, and her word to calm her down is basic.
Just simple, basic stuff. Just ask. Yeah, absolutely. So my story is one that involves my children. While I have worked in the field for 25 years, as I mentioned, as a program director for adults with disabilities, I personally have a child who was born with a brain tumor. She has left-sided hemiparesis, so it does affect a lot of her fine motor movements and so forth. But on top of that, she also has pretty severe dyslexia, as well as my son. So I noticed that my children were very, very faithful Sunday school goers, no pun intended. They went to Sunday school religiously through like 5th grade, 6th grade, Starting in junior high, they all of a sudden preferred to sit with me in church. Mom, can I sit with you? Can I sit with you? Can I sit with you? And I couldn't figure it out. I kept saying, but your teachers are doing such great creative activities and so on and so forth. So through the process of deduction, I realized that, and I asked them, point blank, is it that you don't want to be called upon to read the Bible? And that was truly what it was. They did not want to be called out and struggled, showing their struggle to read publicly. So with this, I think as schools manage this, they talk to families, we develop an IEP, we create a system with the teachers where the teachers will give them a cue. If I give you a cue, it's your turn, or you volunteer, you raise your hand to read, then it's a comfortable situation. Or maybe they volunteer to read something they've read before and they've practiced. There's so many solutions to it. So I think this is just one example where if we educate our teachers, you probably heard me in council not too long ago say, educate the teachers, educate the Sunday school teachers, so that there are children out there with disabilities, some hidden, and many of those kids with hidden disabilities do suffer silently with anxiety, that we can kind of overcome that just by having conversations. How can we, ease your child into this? So that is my personal story, one of my personal stories. Oh, and we've got another one from Myths Cynthia.
This is actually not my story, but I think many of you may know Neil Washburn. He is from the San Diego area, and he is our conference treasurer. He's also someone who uses hearing assistive devices. He travels quite a bit for both work and church service. And when he travels, he visits churches. He shared this story with me a while back, and he gave me permission to share it with others. He said it's his custom to utilize an app on his phone to help him hear when he goes to church. So he went into this church that he was visiting. He sat down, and as he prepared for the worship service, he took out his phone and opened it up to get ready for worship. Immediately, an usher came over to him and told him he needed to put his phone away. You see, this particular church had a no electronics rule while in church. He tried to explain that he used his phone to help him hear, but to no avail. This is a perfect example of a well-meaning rule, but an attitude that hurt somebody. If this person was actually going to this church to try it out, they probably wouldn't return. Marsley?
And now we're going to share our third and final video about the awkwardness that we can learn from, that we started earlier today. So we will learn from these awkward moments. Oh, yes, please. And we have open discussion as well after.
If there are, what's there I'm looking for? Undertitles on the video, if you could put those on, please. I sometimes have trouble hearing, actually. There aren't? Okay.
Oh, great. Excellent point. Absolutely. We need everybody's input.
Good morning, Rob. Good morning there. Man. Morning, Alice!
There's no need to be awkward. Poor Bob. Like so many of us, he just doesn't know how to interact with people with disabilities.
It's pretty easy, really. People with disabilities are people first.
We need the same things that every person needs, like respect.
Good morning, everyone.
Attention! Okay. Maybe we need to be more specific.
The easiest way to show respect is to focus on the person, not the disability. It's okay. You'll get the hang of it.
One easy way to focus on the person is to watch the person signing and not their interpreter.
or their companion.
It's really cool that you'd like to help, but do us both a favor and please ask me first. What you think might be helping? I got you. Wait, ah! Oh no, might actually not.
If you'd like to offer me help, let me hold on to your elbow. Don't take mine.
Hey, would you like to take my arm?
Sure.
Assistive devices help us to live our lives. They're really important and really personal.
Grabbing them only makes it weird for everyone.
What? Please only touch our devices and service animals if we've given you permission. And don't take it personally if I ask you not to. Remember that my service animal helps me all the time. Neither of us would like it if we were separated.
Remember, we make our own decisions. We sign documents, vote, volunteer, work, and pay taxes.
We get married.
So don't underestimate me just because I have a great smile.
Just because I'm blind does not mean I'm deaf.
Just because I'm deaf doesn't mean I'm blind.
And just because I use a wheelchair doesn't mean that I can't sweep you off your feet.
So take a deep breath, relax. We don't bite.
Unless we're really hungry.
Hello there, ladies. How are you?
Hello. And if you're not sure what to do, just ask.
Hi, would you still like to see a menu?
No thanks, but can you please read it to me?
Sure, definitely.
Just treat us the way you would want to be treated, and we'll all be okay.
Good morning. Good morning. Good morning, Alice.
Morning.
Awkward no more. Nice job, Bob. Go forth and be human.
There's no need to be awkward.
Awkward no more, right? All right, I'm going to turn this over to Cindy for some discussion about the videos, open discussion.
Is that what I'm supposed to do? That was Lindsay's part. Okay, so now we would, I don't know, you didn't actually prep me for that.
Just discussion, open
discussion. Oh, open discussion. Hey, guess what? Yeah, that's what we're going to do. So does anybody have any comments or on the videos? Any comments, suggestions, whatever?
More subtitles. I think we got that one clue, and that's more subtitles. I was interested to see right after you asked the question and we said there weren't, then there were a few. So it needs to be more broad on that, I think. But oh.
So the 3 videos were right first the women, the beginning, just ask, or things we wish you knew, we enjoy dating.
I think it's just interesting that, about the subtitles, and just an example, as much as we might think about trying to be open and affirming and accessibility to all and just peace and all of that, just needs continuous reinforcement, continued effort, continued thinking, because, when you think you've got it all, and I've been home listening to her prepare, it just escapes you sometimes, the things that can be done, that ought to be done, that would be helpful to be done.
I think one of the things that I feel blessed to have had is many people in my life personally, including a dear, dear, dear brother-in-law who had cerebral palsy from birth. And he only acknowledged that he had challenges in his probably 50s. Obviously he had them before, but he didn't make them a big deal. And Cindy used to sit right next to me, and I would turn the pages for her when we had the hymns on the big pieces of paper. And that was really meaningful to me, Cindy, and we haven't had a good conversation about that, and we need to, but thank you for that. But we got really connected through that, that little thing. But I think one of the things that is
constantly astounds me is how we unknowingly do disrespectful things and hurtful things. And I think so it's in that, at that point, I think it kind of becomes a two-way street. I mean, of course I should ask, but do I remember that? Not all the time, you know, because my inclination is, oh, go grab the door, because I might do it for a person who's not in a wheelchair. So, but it, you know, I think it makes the playing field a little bit different, but I think the desire as expressed by the fact that we're having this session to know more and do better is so commendable, and it is a constant thing. And we see, one of the things, I've always been involved in membership, every organization I've ever been in, and we have to hope that there's always new people coming in who do not know this stuff. So we have to be constant in doing it perpetually. And it doesn't have to be a whack people over the head kind of thing, but just a reminder, and I love what we're doing with the Tongan land. I think that's an example of working it into who we already are.
Wonderful.
I actually was ignorant right before the session started, and I've worked in the field for many, many years. Reverend Tom, your comment about the captions, I said to Cynthia, I said, it's a small group. Why are we using a microphone? And she said, Marcely, because there's people in the room that are probably hard of hearing. So it's a constant learning process. I agree with you 100%, that we're always living and learning and can always do better, even with our intentions, being as wonderful as they are.
There are a few people with their hands raised on the corner there, in the back.
Okay, sorry about that.
Somebody might have to come up. Going.
Who's first?
Yeah, I would like to ask Cynthia if her assessment has come up with a to-do list for the church.
Yeah.
Yes, we've completed the audit, and we have come up with a wish list and forwarded it to Eric, and he's working on it. So yes, Eric is the business manager for the church, and he and Preston are working on it. So, and it's really cool because I think we're going to have a pretty high score anyway. You don't turn that in until you're through the process. The audit is a multi-page assessment of the congregation and the building, both. As far as the building goes, we are in pretty good shape. There are little things that we can do better. For instance, the soap dishes in the bathrooms need to be lowered just a little bit, but we can take them off and put them down. No big deal. There's just a few things, because that building over there was built in California in the 80s. Well, California had Title 24, which required everything to be accessible, even though ADA was a glimmer in somebody's idea nationally. We were doing it already. So it's all accessible. So, and we've done a lot here. We've put in the chairlift. We've got an accessible elevator. We're in great shape. So it's just little things like writing stuff into our bylaws that make this intentional. Making sure that our staff is trained. Eric is working on this. Stuff like this. Making sure that they have this in the forefront of their brains. And like Dottie said, doing it intentionally and repeatedly. I've already had 2 different committees approach us, wanting to work with us to make sure that the carpet meets the standards, wanting to make sure that the greeters get this kind of information. So this is cool. We're getting there. Yeah, it's happening. Yes, Dale.
First of all, well, I don't think that Pilgrim The next building was built in the 80s, probably the late 90s, approaching 2000. Yeah, the reason I know is our farmers markets, our first one started in the parking lot in 1980, and we had our 25th anniversary, including grass-fed buffalo, in that building when it was brand new in 2005. Am my math good? Yeah. So it's that's good. It's newer. It's up to date. Yeah, no, that's okay. We're all friends here. And the other thing, has anybody else here seen a movie called The Fundamentals of Caretaking? Okay, it sounds like an instruction movie, but I saw it a couple weeks ago on Netflix, and it's about a man who loses his job and his wife divorces him, and he gets trained as a caregiver and at minimum wage, and his first assignment is an 18-year-old in a wheelchair, paraplegic. But this turns the tables. The 18-year-old is he's clever, he's smart, and he's a trickster. And they all go, the two of them start on a road trip together and pick up a couple of younger women along the way. And it is really a lot of fun. And the reason I'm mentioning it is the 18-year-old turns the tables, and he's kind of in charge, and it's just a fun movie to watch. The shoe's on the other foot is my point.
I love that. We always look at their strengths first, right? Even how they get what they want. Yeah.
We do have open discussion later.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. So this was a kind of a discussion about the videos. There will be open discussion. I'm sure they're blending in with one another. But we do have two more stories to share, both Cindy's personal story and then representing Lindsay, who's not with us today.
Me first or Lindsay?
You first.
Okay, well, I'm just going to tell you a few things that people say to me that really puzzle me. And one of them is, so what nursing home do you live in? It's like, excuse me, but I live in my own home right down the street, actually, from the church here. And another one is, so what's your favorite talk show or game show? I really don't have any because I don't have time for that. I am actually employed part-time, but still I do a lot of volunteer work too, but I am employed. I get paid for my work as a, guess what? A disability rights advocate, right? Of course. And then let's see. Okay, the last thing is small children. I don't know why they ask me this, but they always ask me, why are your feet so little? And so I just say, well, that's because that's the way God made me, and which seems to satisfy them, and they go skipping away. Okay, thank you. Which one? Let's see. Oh yeah. Okay. So another thing that people say to me, like a lot. Oh, I couldn't possibly live like you do. I would tell my family to just pull the plug. You wouldn't believe how many people have said that to me. And, like I'd be better off dead, really? Well, I definitely disagree with that. Okay, thank you. Yeah, thank you.
Lindsay, unfortunately, is sick. And she called me, or she texted me last night and asked me to share this story. I remember last year when this happened to her. But this is her story. She said there are lots of tricks that people with disabilities use on a daily basis to help make life easier. She could go through them, but there's a topic that doesn't get discussed in relation to people with disabilities, and that's dating. Most of the experiences are similar to everybody else, but there are some stark differences, and that's the situation that they encounter that other people do not. She had this experience last year with someone she had known as a friend for about 2.5 years. They were very close. They knew each other very, very well, spent lots and lots of time together. To make a long story short, he told her he could never date her, not only because she couldn't drive, but because, in his words, we could never do things like go running or skiing together. He knew she grew up skiing. And we could never have children together because, quote, what would we do if something went wrong and with the baby and I wasn't around? This was one of the first moments in her adult life when she realized ableism existed, and it was very real. The only way, in her opinion, to combat this is through education, and that's why she joined A2A. First Church is a very inclusive church and has been nothing but welcoming to her. But she believed everyone can benefit from education or even a different perspective. This was a very traumatic event for Lindsay. I remember her going through it and talking to me about it. And I just was blown away by this crassness of this guy.
Yeah, unfortunately, she couldn't be here today to share that story, but very, very touching. In her, vulnerable moment, she thought they had a connection and a future together. And then, these reports of just sad, I don't like the word ignorance. I don't think it's ignorance, just lack of understanding and awareness. And that's part of what this committee was about, right? Is just bringing awareness to the topic. And not only was this audit, when you first sent out the audit, Cynthia, to me, it was wonderful because it was not only I always think of A2, I think of it from both perspectives, but right, when you hear the audit and we're reviewing the building and so on and so forth, are we accessible to all and so forth? But there was so much in there about the attitudinal awareness and just shifting attitudes. And that's where I think education comes in and is so important. And I really do hope that we can trickle it down to the rest of the congregation in some way through trainings and bylaws and so forth. So we would like to open it to further discussion to the group. If you have any, I know someone over here had a thought. You had a thought, right, Harold?
An issue that may come up as we come out of COVID is people feeling comfortable coming back to church, being a part of the community, being included. And it may also include helping people who've changed a lot during COVID get to church. I'm thinking of Jim Deaton is getting a ride, but he's really had problems during COVID, so he's getting a ride. Dorothea McNeil just had brain surgery. She would like to come back to church when she can, but she's going to need a ride. So how do we help people who can't get here on their own come and join us?
It's a great question. A year and a half, a lot has happened.
Yeah, and thank you for bringing that up. I mean, it brings up something that I think is important for us to think about, is that disability is not just something that happens to you. You're not just disabled due to birth or an accident. Disability is something that takes place in a system, in a community, right? Where you could use your phone to listen to the service or to help you hear, but the system doesn't allow you to do that, right? And I think one of the things we have to be intentional about is, there may be folks, for instance, who are not able to get vaccinated for some reason, not who choose not to, but who are not able to, or there are kids because there aren't vaccines. And so questions of like, how do we make sure that we are safe? How do we make sure that those of us who are able to be are masked? How do we do our COVID protocol is part and parcel of this accessible to all question. So it's not just this narrow thing of how do we put the ramps in, and are we saying, not that that's narrow, that's super important, but this is part of a bigger part of our identity as a church, is how do we actually welcome people no matter who they are, no matter where they are on life's journey, and no matter which vaccination status they're able to actually get their hands on, among many other possibilities. So I just wanted to raise that to the group.
Concur wholeheartedly.
On that point, I cannot wear a mask because I drive my chair with my chin. And I've almost run up the sidewalk. I've run into bushes. And so that's why I'm not wearing one. But I am vaccinated. Okay. Thank you.
Absolutely. And there's other reasons people can't wear masks, intolerance, so on and so forth, all sorts of things.
I know a lot of emphasis is placed on the physical building and access, but like Marcelie, you were saying, in terms of training ushers and the church population and Sunday school teachers and youth group leaders for some of those more invisible disabilities, like the hearing impairment or vision impairment or Tourette's or educational learning difficulties, like how is that talked about, or is there a plan for that part too?
Yes, it was part of the audit, and that's what very much caught my attention is the whole shifting, and not the physical stuff is easy to fix, right? It's shifting the
Yes. Like Marcelie, I had a special needs son too. So that's very important. And he looks and now is perfectly fine. And he actually does physical fitness for the Army. So he is physically fine. But he had emotional issues when he was a child, and it was a booger to try and, get him what he needed to succeed. So I am very much there. And I'm going to deal with this in my close up, but I will deal with it right now. We're going to have small groups going forward where we can meet and talk about all of these things and how we can move forward with A2A and dealing with all of these things. Plus, I want to mention the flyer that was on the chairs. And did you get one? Yay. Okay. That's a little start. We're going to have articles in the Pilgrim. We're going to have links to more materials. So there's a plethora of material out there. We're going to try to make all of that available as we move forward in the A2A process. Okay?
Absolutely. Make the theoretical intentional.
In general, I hope that we can, as human beings, stop making so many assumptions and start doing the asking. But one of the things I want to put out there, and I hadn't thought about this until right this moment about an A2A issue, and that is gluten intolerance. And one of the things that I started sort of celebrating is that more and more committees were making sure that there was a gluten-free offering at many events. And then all of a sudden, this was obviously a year and a half ago, because we haven't had any since. Then all of a sudden, I would go to an event and there was nothing. It was sort of like, sorry, we can't accommodate all needs, kind of an attitude. Nobody said that, but that was the attitude that I got. And so I think, again, it's another invisible issue that if we really want to welcome and have open arms, we have to do food issues, not just gluten, but that's my personal one. So of course that comes to the top for me, but there's many others. So I think just, again, becoming more and more conscious of everybody's not like me.
Dottie, I think you said gluten-free offering, gluten-free communion, maybe. Anyway, I think that's what you meant.
No, I didn't.
Did you mean
cookies at a celebration?
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. The deacons have talked about. Yeah. Okay. No. The deacons have been talking about communion to make sure everybody has access to what they need, and if that's gluten-free, it should be available to everybody, so nobody stands out by choosing that option. Okay, I'm sorry. My concern is about hearing. I've always had good hearing, but this morning during church, and it just seems like the volume's down too low. And I've had friends who've been watching over YouTube say the sound is all good except for the live presentation in the sanctuary on Sunday mornings. So I guess my concern is who's evaluating this? It seems like it isn't quite what it could be in terms of hearing what is presented. Not so much the music that comes through good, but the spoken word, which of course is very important to us Protestants from the very beginning. John Calvin simplified everything and took away all of the icons and things that were in the Roman Catholic Church, which was visual stuff. And our tradition is heavy duty on hearing things clearly. That's my point.
Yes, thank you, Dale. I actually had a hard time hearing the minister today as well. I don't know if others did.
I think that might be good feedback for our pastors. And I think he left. Yeah, he went away. I can forward that information, sure, because if that's a relatively new thing for you, then it might be just because of our change of staff and a personal preference. But if we feed that back, then because that's a knob, that's a turn. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Yeah. You look like you know something, Harold.
Anne is open to that kind of feedback. So if we get information back to Anne about that issue, she will do her best, I think, to address it. There are issues with Pasha leaving as the sound technician and training a new technician and gearing up to be in the sanctuary and the sound system in the sanctuary compared to the sound system that was used for broadcast, for streaming. So they're still fine tuning a lot of that. We've only been back a couple of months, so it's still in flux. But I'm sure she would appreciate any information about that, any feedback about that.
Yeah, a few weeks.
I'm Roger. I've noticed the sound differential right from the beginning on YouTube. It's not new. I've just adjusted my own volumes to compensate for all the year and a half we've done this.
Cynthia said she'll follow up with Reverend Ann, so that's great. Yeah, I'm sure she'll be open to that feedback. What minister doesn't want people to hear their sermons, right?
Someone mentioned the rug before, and I think there are some trip and fall issues in this room with the rug because of it bunching up. And I think that's one of my issues is balance. So I would really want to see the rug smoothed out.
Isn't there a whole thing going on with the rugs? They're all being replaced. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what all carpeting is being replaced. Bob, is it just the sanctuary? So it's not. Oh, Bob, come help us. But you know about rugs.
Yep, that's cool. The committee it's a subcommittee of the preservation group, and we're going to have carpet, new pads, new carpets all around. Carpets may or may not be under the pews. This is still up in the air, but that's process is going on, and it's all being really carefully addressed in terms of the A2A. So, I mean, the key of that is that if things are carpeted, especially stairs, they will be marked with a white stripe, and they will be thin nap carpets that are bonded closely. I mean, they're actually glued to the stairway so that they don't slip. And these have all kind of gotten loose, and they're a little thicker than we'd like. The other thing I want to really emphasize that Harold brought up, which is there are a lot of people who can't get to church. And we just need to have, and this is my plea, and I'm glad you walked back in, Tom, because the important thing I think is the leadership of the church needs to focus on building a much stronger pastoral care group, a pastoral care group that really is centralized and has informational transfer that's clear. Because I drive past Roger's apartment on a regular basis coming to church, and if the timing's right, I can pick him up. But there are a lot of people that drive past people, and in many cases, Bill Cool knows. He's been driving in, picking up Betty Cole, and so we have done this, but it's been it's not been formal. We need it organized. So that was my only really addition. Thank you.
Thanks, Bob. I knew there was carpet, and I knew he was the man.
Having been on numerous planning committees in my long years, I know that there's that balance between telling too much or telling too early. But I think these kind of things, in some of the articles that come out, just saying we are addressing some things without telling any details or whatever, because you may not be there yet in terms of a solution. But I think now that, it's kind of getting more widely known that this is happening, just giving some peace of mind with tidbits like that would be so helpful.
Absolutely, how we're going to actually put it into action.
Thank you. Hi, Reverend Tom. So I think that as this approaches and we get further along in the process, that we should talk about this actually in a service, so that, maybe we do like a mission moment, like a little 5 or 10 minute piece, but something so that it's getting beyond the wonderful faces that I see in all of our forums, but it needs to get beyond just this wonderful group. And so I think as we move through the process, that we should make sure that that's part of the plan of incorporating that into service.
And with that, we appreciated the introduction today. I didn't know that was happening. So your time with the children, and it was very timely. Yeah, it was great. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Tom. That was lovely. I just want to, again, mention this. Please take it with you. And if you want more to give to anybody else in the congregation, there is a pile up here on the table. And I want to thank our technical person, Byron. Yay! Because, yes, and thank you. But it's all Byron. I asked him and he graciously said yes immediately. And I was like, yeah, thank you so much. Because we were like going, I think this is what we need, but what are we going to do? How are we going to do this? But Byron said he'd take care of it. So we were very happy. Okay, to wrap up, thank you for coming. We're going to move forward with this. We hope you enjoyed this introduction to A2A. We'll be continuing to explore the ways to make our congregation more accessible to all in the coming months. Please watch The Pilgrim for additional information, and let any of us, including Lindsay, know if you're interested in joining the small groups that we intend to have meet in the coming months to explore more ways to make our church more accessible to everyone. Thank you.
Yes, thank you for coming.